Welcome everyone to the show. Here I am today in La Plaza de la Democracia in the center of San Jose, Costa Rica, in company of a very good friend, Fernando Alfaro.
Thank you, Pepito. Nice to see you.
Well,
Thank you for inviting me, and I'm also very happy to be here downtown Plaza de la Democracia. In fact, the name was changed some years ago, and now
Really?
it's the Plaza de la Democracia and the abolishment of the army.
Fernando, before we start, could you tell us a little bit about you?
Well, I'm a Costa Rican. I'm an attorney also. I work with foreign investment, real estate, since a long time ago, and especially in the area of Guanacaste, which I love a lot.
So Fernando, we're going to be doing 2 videos. And the reason why I wanted to do these videos with you is, for example, I'm an expat in Costa Rica. And when I first came to Costa Rica, like I think most expats who come to Costa Rica, is we first come to Costa Rica because of the beauty of the country, because of the protection of the environment. We really hear really good things about the blue zones, about the environment, about a lot of good things. Like Costa Ricans are some of the happiest people in the world. But one of the things I really did not know much about was sort of like the history and the legal aspect of Costa Rica and the Constitution. We hear it's a safe country, but I would like to explore those elements with you today and try to get a better understanding of why exactly is Costa Rica such a safe country.
Sure. I mean, what you're saying, all of these beautiful things you're describing about Costa Rica, and thank you very much. It's because of our history, and especially, I mean, our history has been different, and that's why our reality is quite different from the reality of our neighbors. And maybe, if you allow me, I can go back to the 1800s or a little bit before, and tell you that Costa Rica, or the territory of Costa Rica, was part of the larger territory of Guatemala. And at that time, we were under the ruling or political influence of Granada, Nicaragua. I suppose not a lot of people know about.
No, that just amazes me. So just so I could get this clear. So Costa Rica has been like sort of like a colony of Spain.
The Spanish colonies included Mexico, Central America, and some countries of South America. And in fact, at some point in time, also the west coast of the United States, California, etc.
Really?
Yes, sure. And therefore, Costa Rica was ruled by Guatemala. Guatemala is farther north and is much larger than Costa Rica. And we were also ruled under the Spanish system by the authorities in Granada, Nicaragua. Afterwards, we received the independence. We were informed about our independence. We didn't have to fight for the independence. The independence came from Guatemala. You are independent.
Actually, I heard a story that Costa Rica learned something like maybe a month after the Declaration of Independence that they were actually an independent country.
Yes, in fact, the news came here in October, not in September.
Isn't that amazing?
And at that time, we had to take a decision together with the other Central American territories. We could stay with the larger Guatemala territory, or we could decide to be independent and start to be a republic, Costa Rica. And we decided to go that way. We decided to create the República de Costa Rica.
How did that work out for the country, like the first years of being an independent country?
Well, I mean, that worked in a very interesting manner. And again, I would like to point out another aspect that I think that made a difference, because Costa Rica, early in the history of Costa Rica, we started to bet on education. So the independence was in 1821, and by 1869, Costa Rica declared education as mandatory, free, and paid by the state. That was at that time very progressive. In 2024, maybe that doesn't seem like a big deal, but we're talking about 1869 in a very poor country. And further, or at the same time, it was also mandatory, free, and paid by the state for boys and girls, which was progressive worldwide. And therefore, what's the importance of that? The importance of that is that in an agricultural country, in a country that the economy was based in coffee mainly, the daughter of the peasant that worked in the coffee plantation went to school with the son of the owner of the coffee plantation.
Wow.
So that's where uh, we start to create a more equal uh, community. That's where we start allowing, uh, because of education, people to move, to educate, and to have a better future. And that's the start of the beginning of our present middle class, which is larger than in our neighbor countries. I would add, if we go some years afterwards uh, and get to the 40s, 1940s, at that time, we start betting on health, and the social security was created.
So later in the 1940s, then there was some political turmoil here in Costa Rica. Tell us a little bit what happened.
And yes, we had a small but very important civil war in 1948. And at the end of that civil war, precisely the leader of the part that won the war, Jose Figueres Ferrer,
Right behind us?
right behind us, he issued a decree and abolished the army. And so that's another very important element that brings us to the
Costa Rica today.
of today.
Now, when he abolished the army, okay, here's is for there's a reason why we're here today in the Plaza de la Democracia, and we have the statue here of Figueres. And behind us, this is where the decree was proclaimed.
Yes, yeah, this is
Tell us about this building.
yeah, this is very interesting. This used to be a fort, the Fort Bellavista.
Okay.
Bellavista translates to beautiful view. And here, precisely here, Jose Figueres read or pronounced this decree abolishing the army.
Wow.
I understand that he was standing somewhere in the fort and that he, hit a wall, and as a signal of
Goosebumps thinking about that.
yeah. And since then, we have not had an army, of course. In that year, 1948, we also started working in our present constitution. And again, the constitution includes several of the elements that result in what we are today.
So when we say Costa Rica is a peaceful country, it's peaceful because of the spirit of the Costa Rican people.
Let's try to imagine something. Let's try to imagine that you are a worker in the 40s, in the 50s, in the 60s, 70s, 80s, that you work in agricultural, or that you work in a shop or in an office or whatever, and you know that your kids go to school for free. You know that if your kids get sick, they will be treated in the hospital. You know that you have rights as a worker. That makes you feel safe, makes you feel fine. You're not used to having to fight for your kids' health or for your kids' food. You know that you're not angry with your employer because he's exploiting you, and you understand that the system gives you the road or the way to be able to discuss whatever you think has to be discussed. So I think that we were raised to learn to talk, to discuss, to use the system to try to solve whatever problems.
Now, before we conclude, because one of the things also that defines the history and law in Costa Rica is, I believe, here is a French style of law system.
Yeah.
It just as a quick resume on that. Where does that come from?
Yeah, that's a very important thing.
The Napoleon Code.
Yeah, the Napoleon Code. Yeah, Napoleon invaded Spain in the early 80s, wraps the elements of the French Constitution.
Okay.
You know, liberty, freedom of enterprise, etc. So the Constitution that ruled these territories comes at the end from the French Constitution, or is very influenced by the French Constitution. And that's why our first Constitution and the constitutions thereafter duplicate the Republican system, which we know. And that's why we have an executive power, that's the government. We have a legislative power, which is the Congress. We have the court system, and we also have a fourth power, a temporary power, which is the elections tribunal, which the main building is behind us. And that's your origin. And in that sense, I think that we share some of our political background with France, Canada, etc.
Fernando, this sort of like terminates the first part of our two interviews we're doing together. In the next video, we're going to talk a little bit more of how laws are made in Costa Rica. And we thank everyone for watching, and we thank you very much for your time. Thank you for sharing your country with us. You're welcome. Pura vida, amigos.
Soy tico porque llevo a Costa Rica en las entrañas, porque lloro cuando escucho la guitarra, cuando trema la marimba y con la puesta del sol. Soy tico y si me asomo a la ventana, me cautiva la montaña y se me alegra el corazón. Soy tico porque siento las canciones de mi tierra, porque vibro con la luna liberiana, caballito nicoyano, la patriótica y pasión. Soy tico y cuando miro la alborada, el lamento del yigüirro me acelera la emoción. Y cuando caen los fuertes aguaceros, es como si yo fuera la semilla. Me huele a tierra fértil el sendero, llenando de ilusión mi alma sencilla. Soy tico porque cada vez que encuentro a un amigo forastero, le demuestro mi calor. Soy tico porque vivo enamorado y orgullosa de la tierra que ha inspirado esta canción. Si yo fuera la semilla, me huele a tierra fértil el sendero, llenando de ilusión mi alma sencilla. Soy tico porque una guaria morada me engalana la mirada y me impresiona de verdad. Soy tico y si eso no te dice nada, yo te mostraré mi patria. Dame la oportunidad. oportunidad. Muchas gracias, muy amables.